Kind of like, I ask you how much would you sell your child for? And you don't come back and you say, well, what are you offering? You're saying, I'm offended that you would even raise the question. Now, it doesn't mean that it's permanent because we are fortunately all hypocrites, and there sometimes, there's that old joke, a little bit old-fashioned about the man who says to the woman, "Would you sleep with me for $1 million?" And she said, "Gee, $1 million? I don't know. Well, I'd have to think about it." He said, "Would you sleep with me for $100?" She says, "What kind of woman do you think I am?" And it says, "We've already established that. We're just haggling over price." So that captures, is, a little bit sexist by today's standards, but it captures a crucial feature of our psychology, namely that there are certain categorical distinctions that are sacred, that under the right circumstance we can rethink if the price is right. And that hypocrisy might be the hope for all of us.
Wow. Like an MIT economist would say, there actually is a price for that baby.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. And I think there's economists really offend people, the economist's way of thinking. But I think it's undervalued.
There's something there.
There's something there.
If regression analysis.
There is. And if the people in the Middle East could be bribed away from their sacred values, there'd be people who are alive and prosperous who now would be killed or impoverished.
Right, they would cut the check if they could make the violence.
If we could get people to accept the check, I think on average we'd be better off. Right. My colleague Michael Sandel would have a fit. He just wrote a book arguing the exact opposite, that there's just too much economic thinking, but I think we could actually use more of it.
Okay.
I am a utilitarian in that sense.
I was wondering if you could tell us, Stephen, what is a typical week like for you at Harvard University? Do you walk in with your crimson robes on? And
yeah, that would be on
trumpets.
On April Fool's Day, maybe.
Okay.
At best. The typical day is very different when the semester's in session versus the rest of the year.
Okay. Do you teach?
Oh yeah, big time.
Undergrads, grads?
I teach psychological science, a course that has anywhere from 200 to 300 undergraduates in it. So I lecture to a big lecture hall.
Okay.
And I organize the graduate seminar for one of the tracks in our department, Cognition, Brain, and Behavior. So I lecture and schedule my colleagues to give lectures. I make appearances in team-taught courses. And I do a lot of undergraduate events, the undergraduate Mind-Brain Behavior Society, the Futurist Society, the Secular Humanists, the Hillel Jewish Student Society, pretty much whoever asks me. So I do.
Why do you do that with undergrads? Because you don't have to do that. You could be writing books and giving TED Talks.
Well, two reasons. One of them is I get a paycheck from Harvard, and I figure that's what they pay me for. But also, it's actually, we would probably do it even if, well, I guess it isn't required. If I didn't do it, no one's keeping track as far as I know, except for the undergraduate teaching. That really is in the contract. But I also, on top of that, just the duty to my institution, in 40 years I'm going to be dead. But the ideas that I think are interesting, that I'm hoping to enrich, I kind of hope that they'll survive. If they do survive, the only way they're going to survive is that people who aren't going to be dead in 40 years, to wit, younger people, know about them. And so you can't believe in ideas and the value of ideas and the value of science and explanation and rationality without wanting to share them with younger people. That's part of the package of thinking that ideas are a good thing in the first place. So I do feel a responsibility to share it, well, with people in general, and that includes younger people.
Does it also help you keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening with that younger generation?
Yes, and that's something that I should have mentioned as well, that I think part of being wise, part of being a scholar, part of being a scientist is recognizing, being alert to your own limitations. The reason that in science we have experiments, we have peer review, we've got open criticism, we at least pretend that ideas are what count, not authority. The esteemed fancy professor has to take a question from an undergraduate and take it seriously and defend it with the best possible evidence, even if it's some underling. That's the whole value system, that the people are apt to defend things for personal reasons, and that if you want to advance knowledge, you've got to minimize all of this psychology that's a big nuisance. Ego, investment in your own ideas, sacred values, everything's up for grabs. And so part of that is there are things that are going to be obvious to me. And as I get older, they're going to still be obvious just because I'm the same person. And it is going to be younger people who weren't brought up in the same way, who are going to have ideas that I'm going to find offensive, some of which are probably going to be true. And if I'm serious about what I'm doing, I got to listen. And it's sometimes going to be painful. And probably I'll go to my grave defending wrong ideas, which seem right to me just because I am a human being. And the younger people challenging them are going to be right and I'm going to be wrong. But the more I try, with however much difficulty it's going to take those ideas seriously, probably the more correct my ideas are going to be.
Sounds like a House of Commons debates where, these people like the Prime Minister have to constantly be accountable.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now that's great theater for an American. Our parliamentary, our senatorial proceedings have much more decorum. But on the other hand, they also get locked into a lot of bad decisions. So yeah, that's absolutely right.
How do you keep your ego in check? I mean, how are you able to look at the fact that I'm an aging Steven Pinker, and then I know that by definition some of my ideas are going to be obsolete, and yet I'm still going to cling on to them because of my ego? Like, how do you keep that in check?
Fortunately, it's not totally up to me. So I do. Reviewers will review my books, and other scientists will review my papers, and they'll ding them if they think they're bad, and I'll be enraged and furious and offended and insulted, and there's just nothing I can do about it. I think there are a number of injustices, but it doesn't matter. They're going to happen anyway. So all in all, it's the system that's going to keep my ego in check, and I do what I can. That is, I keep trying to remind myself, well, maybe your opponents have a point, probably not as successfully as I should, and fortunately the world is set up so that I don't always get my way.